Professor Orgley's here finishing up the serialization lecture. There's one last thing I want to show you, and it's how to put an extension on a file. If you're talking about my mom, she doesn't know what .json means. She doesn't know to remember to put the .json extension. So when I run this, and I put this over here, and I put some information there. So let's say I put Nick2 with some spaces, put my gender, I'll put my age, and I'm going to click save. Out pops this. I can click person. Let's say I remove JSON. For programmers, we know we need to put an extension there, and we know we need to put the .scr or .json. But my mom may not know that, or some person who's not computer savvy may not know that. So they may just put, okay, I'm going to save my person information. And then they click go. Look at that. The app works. And if I close this, go back to my file chooser, or open up Finder, go back to my desktop, this saved correctly. And it actually doesn't know what it is. So if I go to the information and I do get info, you'll see it thinks it's just a text document. The default file type is .txt. Now that may work for JSON because JSON is text, but that may not work for your serialization file. And they may not work when you're trying to pass a file over to another system. It may not know what type of file it is. So it is good to put the file type and have the extension there. You don't want to let it default. Now, if I open this up with TextEdit, it opens up just fine. It opens up just fine. And if I run the app and deserialize the file, it also works just fine. So I can open up person without an extension, and I'm able to read it just fine. You'll see the spaces there. But that's not a good programming practice. And you want to help your user out because they may not know they need to put an extension there. Will your app work? Yes. Can you transfer the file over to another server? Maybe. Are you supposed to be doing that by following proper programming techniques? No, you should have an extension there. You'll notice all my other files have extensions. So we can help the user. And we should have done that on the first serialization example. So handle open, we don't need to worry about it. But when they're saving the file, we should check to see if they put an extension there. First, we can check and say, hey, you didn't put an extension, you need to put one there. Or we can just check for them and add it for them. Okay, which I think is the better way. Because if I tell my mom and give her a warning, say, hey, you got to put an extension there, she's not going to know to put JSON or .txt or .ser. So I'll just have an if here. If the file is not null, which means they did select one, we're going to check. From the file, we can do a get name. We can get the name of the file, and it's a string. So I can use the string class. String class has an ends with. I'm going to say, does it end with JSON? Let's say they put the wrong extension. Let's say they put the wrong extension. So if it doesn't ends with JSON, make sure you put that negation there. Then what are we going to do? So if it doesn't end with JSON, okay, we're going to add it for them. So we'll create a new file based off the old one. So it's going to be based off the old one. The only difference is we're going to add .json there for them. Now you can do some more thorough checks. You know, do they put a dot in there? If they did, maybe remove it. Because if they do .txt, what this is going to do is put .json behind it. It's not going to check to see if they put an extension there. It's just going to say, whatever extension you put, I don't care. I'm going to put .json behind it. So this can be a little bit smarter than just this simple if. But this is a good user experience. If they forget the extension, help them out. Okay, so this is a great user experience. You want to focus on this when you're building your final project. When the TAs are running your app, if there's no default data, which we talked about earlier, let's say they open up your app and the app's empty. They got to type for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however many minutes. They got to type a bunch of data just to see what your UI looks like. You're going to get points taken off. Okay. If you don't have a nice UI design, they close the app, they delete some data, or they accidentally click something and they mess everything up. Okay. You're going to get points deducted. You want a good user experience. You want to have default data so the TA doesn't have to enter in data for 10 minutes just to see what your UI looks like. You want to do some basic checks. You want to do error checking and have error messages. This is what makes a good application. So if the file name does not end with JSON, we're going to add it there for them. Okay, we're going to add them for. You can even put an or. If it doesn't end with JSON or .txt, add something there for them. Okay, but this is a JSON file, so it would be good to put .json, even though JSON is a string, because JSON is a format and it's a common format. So when people see it's a JSON file, they'll know exactly what it is. So now if I do nic3, I do nic3 with some spaces, and I can put spaces up here to make sure it works. Looks like I had a space there. And I'm going to pick a gender, and I'm going to pick my age, and I'm going to save it. And let's just say I don't do anything. I just do untitled, click save, go back to my file chooser. Look at that. It put JSON there for me. If I do a right click and do get info, okay, it's actually, it still says a text file here. I'm surprised it says that. It should say it's a JSON file. But other file systems, other operating systems are going to know this is a JSON file. Okay, so then it'll act accordingly. So now if I close the app out and I want to resume later, I can run it and I can open it up. Here it is. And you'll see my information there. Okay, now if I make changes and then close, you'll see I get a warning. It says, hey, I see you made changes. Are you sure you want to continue? I'm going to say no. I'm going to save this. And let's say I do person, and let's say I did .scr by accident or .txt by accident. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to replace it. Then when I go back to the file system, you'll see it did ser and .json. But usually the file system will notice the last extension. So whatever extension they put there earlier doesn't matter. The last one will be the most important one. But you can make this smarter. You can remove this, or you can check for a period already. This is just a basic check and something that you should be doing for your final project. So if I close this, run it again. Okay, load in the new file. You'll see it works perfectly. If I make some changes and then close the window by accident, look at this, it pops up. It says, hey, I noticed you made some changes. Are you sure you want to continue? No, I don't want to mess those up. I'm going to save that first. You'll see it consumed it. So it means that it will prevent the window from closing. And now I can close it with no problem. If I open it back up, load in my file, make some changes, close it, you'll see I get the warning. Do I want to continue? If I say yes, I'll discard those changes. Okay, so this is a good user experience, as well as the on-stage close request. And the only way I can do this is by passing the stage over in the main. So you see in the main, I have the stage as a parameter. I pass that over to the controller, and then in the controller, whenever the stage is closed, I can check to make sure that they have all the right information and that they didn't modify it. And that way they don't lose any of their work. We should also do this in this example. I forgot to do this. If I go back to the serialization example, I should do the same whenever I'm doing a save. So whenever I'm doing a save, this one is a Java serialization file. So I should have a similar if. Okay, right before I open up the file input string, I should have a similar if file.getName ends with .ser. If it doesn't, so make sure you put the negation. If it doesn't end with this, we'll create a new file using the old one, and we'll add the extension for them. Okay, because most people don't know I need to do .ser for a serialization file. And some programmers may not even know you need to do a SER with the serialization. So doing little code snippets like this to help the user out is a good practice to do. So make sure you're doing this for your final project. Make sure you have error messages. Make sure your app is nice and easy to use. It's important to think about the user. Without the user, you don't have a business. Without users, you're not going to be able to pay for, Google Maps or YouTube. You got to have users in order to pay for all that stuff. And the only way to keep users is to have a good user experience. So make sure you're always thinking about the user. The user comes first. Take care of the user, and the user is going to take care of you. Okay, that's it. That's serialization. Make sure you know what serialization is for the final exam. Make sure you load and save data for your final project. Serialization is a concept that will be tested on the final exam. So study it, review it, make sure you know what it is. Doesn't matter what format, just the overall concept. Taking an object and saving it, or taking an object and sending it. And then when you get that object, loading it back into memory. Okay, so I take an object, I serialize it, and I store it to a file. Then I send that file over the network to a server. Server gets the file, opens it back up, and loads that object into memory. That's serialization and deserialization. I still got some cool stuff to show you. The next application is one of my favorites. It's the New York Times viewer. It's one of the best examples for the final project. I'm going to go over it in the next lecture. Stick with Professor Wergeles, and we'll see you next time.